I've always been in awe of professional athletes, not only the glorious display of athleticism, what the human body is capable of when it's in peak condition, but the discipline and focus that is required to train your body day in, day out, month after month, week after week, year after year, to get to your dream and then stay there. And the mental and emotional strength that's required to push through the pain, find that next gear, hold and operate under immense pressure in the greatest stadiums in the world with 1 million people watching. It's such a great template for life, that champion mentality that I can win, I can do it, I'm going to get it. And we've all got a champion within us. We've just got to give ourselves permission to unleash it. And what would be possible if we allowed ourselves to show up and operate at the highest version of ourselves? So when I was introduced to Dave Scatchard, I was so inspired. I really loved reading his book, The Comeback, My Journey Through Heaven and Hell. I listened to his podcast, the All-Star Success Codes podcast, and he's doing such an amazing job of helping other people unleash that champion. When he had his 5th concussion after a very successful 14-year career in the NHL, he could have just kind of rolled over when he couldn't walk properly, couldn't sleep, had horrible headaches, couldn't speak properly, couldn't remember things. It could have been game over. But he dug deep and he went, nope, this isn't going to be my story. And he found that next gear and continued to find that next gear and find those answers with a bunch of teachers and healers and coaches, and created a whole new life for himself with his peak performance coaching and all-star success coaching. And I just had to have him on to speak to you because he's got this amazing 9-step system for how you can get really, really clear about what you want, what your "it has to be me" is, and make a plan to train and do what needs to be done to get there. So I think you are going to love hearing from him. So let's get the skinny from Dave Scatchard.
Dave, I am so excited to be with you because I just finished reading your book yesterday and found myself reading excerpts to my daddy because your relationship with your father is so beautiful. I mean, your book in many ways is a love letter to him and to all of your teachers. And so I want to just start there because not everybody has those great first teachers like your mum and your dad. And you talk about having a lifetime of coaches and that we're all being trained to be the people that we are and want to be. And it's how we take up those lessons and listen to those things that makes the difference. So can you just take us inside what your dad taught you? I mean, one of my favorite things is the story when you're sitting at the lake house and you look over in the distance as a little boy and you say, Dad, do you think I can swim over there? And he says, I don't know, can you? What do you need to do? So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I got a little cover of my book right here, The Comeback, My Journey Through Heaven and Hell. And when I sat down to write it, the first words that came to my mind were, I'll read it from the introduction, but it says something like this. It says, Dad, say hi to God for me. Or this book is dedicated to my dad, a man who allowed me to chase my dreams fearlessly and who I always knew believed in me. A man with wisdom of someone who had direct connection with the truth, and a man who would help anyone, anytime, because that was the fabric that he was made of. He was my hero and my friend and my idol. I love you, Dad. I miss you. And I hope you're having fun in heaven. P.S. Give a God a heart for me. So it's funny that was one of your favorite stories. I've heard that from dozens of people, and they could actually feel like they were me and they were trying to do this in crazy swim. And I actually paddleboarded this summer with my kids across the lake just to see how far it was. And it was 2 miles. It was 2 miles across the lake. And I'd never swam that far. I was in board shorts. But that was my dad. He never said, oh, that's dangerous, or you shouldn't do that, or let's go get a life jacket or a wetsuit. He's like, well, there's only one way to find out. Let's go. And I just didn't even bat an eyelash because I always accepted challenges. And I just walked into the lake even though I wasn't a great swimmer, I started swimming and breaststroking and backstroking and just trying not to drown. And before I knew it, the canoe just pulled up beside me, and he was paddling beside me, making sure I didn't get hit by any big boats. So, you know,
Yeah.
the funniest part was when I got across the other side, I was exhausted. It took a couple hours. And like I said, I wasn't an excellent swimmer. And I turned around to swim back, and he looked at me and he started laughing. He said, "You only said, I wonder if I could swim across. You didn't say you were going to go across and back." And the funniest part is,
But in chat,
there was a current that I didn't realize I was swimming directly into, because when I started to swim backwards, I felt like I was being so it was triply as more difficult than I was expecting. But it's a great story and gives everyone a laugh, and I'm sure that we've all done stupid stuff.
but more than that, for me, it's about this idea of what do you need to do to make it happen. I loved when you talked about how he was a Tony Robbins before his time, getting you to write lists and manifesting and visualizing what you wanted and training
I have no
to
idea.
do what you needed to do to be prepared.
I have no idea how he knew the things that he knew, like with the words that he used. My dad grew up on a farm, and he worked in a coal mine. Like, he was a PE teacher, but he quit that to go into coal mining. But like, this is a town in Alberta with like 5,000 people in it. There's not a lot of motivational speakers or anybody that comes through.
Yeah.
That. So, but his attitude was that every single thing is possible if you can visualize it and imagine it enough times of you becoming successful with it, that it becomes real. And then he would ask me, like, I told him I want to make the NHL as a young boy, and he said, "Well, what are some things that you could do right now today, from today till you're 18 years old, that would help you make the NHL?" And I said, "Well, I'm not big enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not a good enough skater, and I don't shoot the puck hard enough. The one thing I could work on every day is I could shoot pucks in my backyard in the net, and I had this little piece of plastic, and I would collect all these pucks that flew over the hockey arena outside the glass when the big kids practiced, and I would take them home. And I had a collection of like 100 in a milk crate, and I would shoot 100 pucks a day, rain or shine. It would be snowing, I'd lose the pucks, it'd be raining, I was just like drenched and cold. But that repetition of those practice shots, thousands and thousands and thousands of shots, it built this belief in me that I do have the best shot on the team. I do have the best shot of anybody that I know. And as I got into the NHL, I became known for an accurate shot. It probably helped me make a couple more $1 million. It probably helped me stay in the league a little bit longer. But that was one thing that I knew that was in my control, that nobody else could mess with. And if I just took my shots, at least I was preparing myself for greatness in some respect. I still had a bunch of other things I'd have to do later, but that was one thing that I could control. It was in my control. And that's a theme for my whole life. It's all in my control. Like, there are things that are outside of my control that I'll never be able to, change. But if I handle the things that are in my control, my odds go dramatically up, to the point where, like, I believe I'm unstoppable. I believe that I can do anything. And, this is a little early in the podcast to get into it, but, I came from nothing. We didn't have much money. I came from a small town, but somehow scouts discovered me, and I moved away from home when I was 15 years old, turning 16. And I did the things I had to do to get noticed. My whole career, I would always be the hardest working person. I'd do the dirty work. I'd fight. I'd hit. I'd do whatever I could just to stay in the lineup. And it taught me that anything's possible. When I left the game and I started coaching, I wanted to become one of the best coaches in the world in life and business and athletes and all that. I became one. When I started marketing, I got a 2 Comma Club award behind me. That's $1 million of sales in a sales funnel. I wanted to win that, but I had no idea how to do it. I didn't know how that works. I've done an Ironman. To my left, my wife framed my Ironman stuff. And I did that a couple of years ago after barely being able to walk a few years ago. So like, I'm nothing special, Tess, and you've interviewed amazing people, and I guarantee you that a lot of the successful people that you know probably weren't the most naturally gifted, just, oh, here's a life on a silver platter kind of thing. It's almost like they got to like find another gear somehow and grind it out. And then finally it's like all this hard work sort of catches up in one instant, and boom, you make it, or you win, or you get the award, or you achieve the goal. But it's like all the work that's done before it that I actually have fallen in love with. And that's the secret, right? Don't you think?
So one of the things, absolutely. One of the things that struck me about your book and listening to your podcast, you don't use the word luck. And I loved that because champions don't need luck. They make their own. And so this idea of being prepared and why settle for ordinary when extraordinary is within you and within your grasp, and knowing that you have that next level within you and helping to unleash that in other people. So I want to ask you about this idea of fear, because you say a phrase quite a bit, which really struck me, which is, I am built to figure it out. There is a higher version of me calling me. And that's what you tell your coaching clients. So I want to just get inside of that a little bit, because taking ownership of yourself and your choices and taking responsibility and thriving in uncertainty is what you teach people, you know, in every aspect of your life, not just as a coach. But one of the things that struck me was this idea that you were talking about, forget polarity. Forget neutrality, go with polarity and really stick with what you know and go for it, you know? So can you just take us inside that mindset of staying in that place of constantly holding this higher, better version of yourself and doing the work to expand, you know, that part of yourself?
Yeah, it's really crazy how this came to me multiple times in different ways. I wish, like, I do have a whiteboard here. I can almost draw it out. But imagine when you're born and you're pure, right? Like, you are connected to everything and everyone, and you're being taken care of, and you let people take care of you, and you learn so quickly, and your body physically grows so quickly, and you develop so quickly. And like, when you're little, you think you can fly. When you're little, you can jump in a mud puddle and nobody says anything because it's cute, right? And then at a certain point, you might get a spanking. You might be getting somebody yelling at you saying, hey, don't jump in the mud puddle, make your clothes dirty. Oh, okay, I didn't know, right? And then you go to school and, hey, sit still. Hey, don't talk back. Hey, don't do this, don't do that. And then, so as a little learner, you start to be trained to be submissive almost, in a way. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's almost like you're being programmed down into this lower frequency of being obedient and not sticking your head up and not standing out to blend in almost. And it's nobody's fault. It's just our system. What I like to do is I like to push people and have them go through this thing called an emotional flood. Okay. And in this emotional flood, we take you back, Tess, to some of the most beautiful moments in your life when you were absolutely on fire. It could be a girl's road trip that you were on and you were laughing hysterically and it was the silliest thing, but you couldn't stop laughing. It could be the most beautiful sex you've ever had, where it was orgasmic and your toes were curling. It could be the most beautiful sunrise, the best sporting event when you made some incredible basket, or, you know, playing basketball or hit the softball or whatever it was for you, right? Whatever those things are, we start to grab the recipe of like what that vibration was like, because I believe,
yeah,
and I can really communicate it well with people who played sports, but like, you know, those moments when you had your best game and then like, you don't even really know how it happened. You're kind of like out of body experience. You're in the zone. It's just happening for you. Everything's slowed down. You're relaxed. You're happy. You're just like, everybody's cheering for you.
You're present.
That is our true essence of who we are. It's not the person that's got 80 backpacks on, lugging their baggage around from their life, from all the stuff that happened to them and the trauma and the rape and the, you know, I'm not downplaying any of these things. I've had abuse myself. But what I'm saying is, when you're free of all that, you naturally vibrate at a higher frequency, and it's almost like this antenna that brings, it's like a magnet. It brings in the right people, the right timing, the right divine appointments. You make money without trying, like, you know what I'm saying? And I believe that if you can escape the programming by stepping into that higher frequency and higher vibration, anything's possible. And I've taken clients who are literally come into my office, almost looks like they're zombies, within a 2 or 3 hour session where we could work through all this stuff. We don't have to like relive it all to the max or anything like that. We just have to acknowledge that there's some stuff there that we need to eliminate, and that there's a way higher frequency that we just need to remember. And it's almost like when they remember it, okay. And it's like if your computer had a virus in it, your computer's just glitching all the time. You're like, man, why does my computer keep glitching? Oh, well, I need an upgrade. And you put in a new operating system, and that thing clicks in, and you're like, oh, there we go. Now I got all this new bandwidth. I can do things with it. This laptop's working way better. I like to just look at our system that we are connected to and running, and it might be a little outdated.
Yeah, I like this idea of really listening to yourself and checking in with yourself for the adjustments that need to be made. So through the lens of your NHL story, I just want to go back a little bit. This idea of identity. So following on from what we were just talking about, it's easy literally when you are a celebrity and you are a professional athlete and you literally have a name and a number on your back in front of all these people, and your identity is very tied up in that and the numbers and the score and the history and the plays and this sort of stuff. And so people think they know who you are, and your identity is very tied to what you do, or at least that's what we think. Right? So when that was literally taken away from you because of all of those concussions, and you were in such pain and couldn't think clearly and couldn't hold your life experience, your kids screaming and playing and laughing and as they were just being themselves was too much for you to bear. You couldn't remember things at the grocery store. It was just, you were not feeling like yourself, and you had to learn how to learn again. Can you take us inside how you reframed your sense of identity and who you are?
Yeah. Identity is huge. And I'm going to come back to your point in a second, but this weekend, I was playing a charity game for a Navy SEAL who passed away in a helicopter accident in Iraq or Afghanistan. And we went to the Navy SEAL training base where they do all the BUDS training and all that. And like, we literally had the rafts on our heads, and we're like, just seeing like, wow, this is where all the training goes on. And it's legendary around the world about how hard these Hell Week is for these guys. But I was talking to one of the main sergeants, and he said that the identity loss for the Navy SEALs when they leave is devastating. And that's like the same thing for us as hockey players or any athlete, or even moms, when your kids leave home and you're not like the stay-at-home mom anymore. Like, who am I? Like my wife was a model in New York City, and then she changed that identity to a stay-at-home mom. And then the kids went off to school, and she's like, what do I do now? So she became an esthetician.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're always trying to find an identity, but people will die for their identity, good or bad, right? If somebody's a fitness freak, they're never going to be out of shape because that's part of their identity. They value that higher than most things. So your point was how do we rebuild the identity? Was that the question?
Yeah. Just, or how did you personally make sense of it? And then how do you help other people hold who they are?
Okay. So this is really interesting. And you mentioned listening to yourself. There was a point where I was just floundering about, and I kept like the doctors announced me permanently disabled. That was my label. Dave, sorry, after 3 years of therapy, you're just permanently disabled. You're going to be like this the rest of your life. And I could have accepted that label as a 36-year-old man and gone on with my life and just been like, man, I'm just unlucky. Like, look what happened to me. Like, this is why I can't do anything, because I'm permanently disabled. But my background and the way I was raised and stuff, I just believed in the impossible. And even though the smartest doctors in the world are telling me I'm done and I won't be able to function very well, I said, there's got to be an answer. I have to go create a new identity. I don't want to be the concussion guy anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of that story. I'm absolutely disgusted by it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want another person asking me how I'm feeling today. Oh, it's too bad that happened to you. Oh, it's just rough, Dave. So I had to choose another identity. So then I choose one of healing, and I started to go on this healing journey all around the world with monks and shaman and Tony and I spent over $1 million on my therapy and on my education for what I'm doing now in my life. When I got done all that, I realized that there are all these things that I never knew and that could give me access to different energies and frequencies and vibrations to heal. Well, once I started to heal, I said, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I said, this didn't all just happen to me by accident. I have to share these stories. I have to be able to take these experiences and not waste them by keeping them to myself. I don't think any of us should take these things and keep it a secret to ourselves. I think it happened to us for us to be able to share. And I believe God wasn't punishing me with these injuries. He was training me for the people that I was about to go help. But
yes, I loved when you said that. I was in training. This was just another part of my training. And that challenges or crises or disasters they're opportunities, or every experience is an opportunity to learn and grow and discover things about yourself.
Yeah, when you're going through it never feels good. You're like, why is this happening to me again, right? Or why did this happen to me? I don't deserve this. Well, you don't know the plan.
Yeah.
I know the plan. So I did decide to start coaching. This is the most important thing I'm going to say today, probably. Well, it's all important, but I think somebody can take this to the bank that's listening right now. I had to claim something. Okay? And what I mean by that is I could float around and meditate 4 or 5 hours a day. And Tony called me a monk in my cave. He's like, you're not helping anybody. You're a monk in your cave. You're not even sharing one thing that's happened to you. Get out there and share it. So I said, I literally got completely vulnerable, completely naked. I did this whole removing armor exercise where I got back to the purest version of my soul, and I stepped forward with it, and I felt so vulnerable. But I said, this is how I'm going to live my life. This is part of my new identity, but I'm going to claim that I'm going to be one of the world's best coaches, and I'm going to have influence over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. I'm going to share my stories over and over and over again because I know that it can help people. And I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not going anywhere. This isn't a one and done. I'm not going to go make money and cash out. That's nothing to do with that. This is to serve people at the highest level. And I went ahead and I did a 7-day challenge, which I've never done I've never done a challenge. I don't even know how to market. I don't even know how any of this works. And I was so scared, and I'm hitting record, and I did have a little warm audience that followed some free stuff I was giving out, but I'd never done a challenge. I didn't know how it worked. My Zoom was terrible. My microphone, my camera's outside. I'm trying to log people in. I'm trying to check. It was just me. I had no assistants, nobody helping. And I literally had no clue. Graphic design. I'm doing all these things. I learned so much. And I did 5 or 6 of those that year. And we had 25,000 people come through. And out of that was how we got the $1 million is we made $1 million that year. Just by giving free content and then having people ask what else they could do following us. And I was like, wow, it's a win-win-win. The people who listened and didn't buy, they win because they got awesome information, and I got many emails and texts and DMs about it. The people that bought are in my course, and they've had $87 million in results we've had so far with our clients, which is amazing. And then I win just by trying to do the right thing. So how cool is that? Is, everybody wins. So when you can set up the game and it's rigged where everybody...
Yeah, it's very good when everybody wins. And
Yeah.
I think that idea that everybody can win together is really fantastic. I want to go inside of the process a little bit though. You talk about armors and masks and balancing the masculine and feminine energy within you, balancing the monk and the inner champion and the external gladiator. So as an NHL player, oh man, I mean, it's a glorious display of athleticism, but it's a violent sport and there are a lot of fights and you've got to be really aggressive and that puck is heavy and it hurts, right? And when you get smashed up against things, I mean, you're just dealing with pain all the time, right? So you had your masculine and your maleness, right? The masculine forward, energy, like it had to be forefront, right? So when you went through the Tony Robbins experience and you were traveling the world with all of these shamans and healers, and the feminine and the allowing and the listening and that divinity was really calling to you, and you took up the invitation and allowed it in. I want to talk about this flex and flow of having both and allowing yourself to balance both the masculine and the feminine and the monk and the gladiator and the inner champion, and holding all of these parts of yourself that makes up your identity and who you choose to show up as, and how that's informed your coaching practice, where you are helping men and mostly women actually really hold those parts and giving themselves permission to do that. That you talk about what I loved in the end of your book was accessing your vulnerability is what amplifies you, actually shedding those armors and marks. So just take us inside your mindset about that.
Wow. Well, I could coach 3 days on this, but
I know. Let's get to the juice.
Yeah, it's in bullet point form. I would say we all have masculine and feminine energy. Some of us have more of one than the other, and it's not one is better or one is worse, or one you can't be.
We need both.
You can't be successful if you're in your feminine. Like, I think a lot of people default to masculine, especially if they're in the business game or like a leadership role. They feel like that is because that's sort of what they've watched. But if you really watch a true feminine, she's even more powerful than a masculine feminine because she captivates the masculine. Like, it can't even take its eyes off, and it doesn't have to push. It can just ask. Where if it's a feminine masculine, she'll be it's almost like the same vibration. So it's a little different, but the feminine is quite seductive. And, when I'm mentioning that I actually have a lot of feminine in me, I believe that there is a healer in me. I believe that there is compassion and love. I think those are probably my strongest gifts. And the fact that I went out and did the job that I did every night, where I'd have 220-pound men trying to pound my face in or stop me from scoring a goal or to injure my superstar teammate, one of my roles was that I would have to get in and defend those players because I was a big guy. I was 6'3" and 225 pounds, and I could fight. I didn't want to fight. I hated fighting, but I was good at it. And it allowed me to break into the league a little bit earlier than my skill set would allow me for. So it was sort of a mechanism to get into the league because they needed a couple of players like that on the team that I got in on. But when I got injured, I kind of shunned the gladiator because I felt like that's what put me in this position. And it wasn't until I was so in my feminine and so in my monk state that I wasn't
You had to get you to pull out of it.
I wasn't even living on planet Earth, but I wasn't having any impact on planet Earth. So I had to call in the good parts of the gladiator, the discipline, the focus, the powerhouse, the masculine strength, the guy, the Sherpa, right? Like, let me take you up the mountain. I'll show you how to.
The
protector, exactly. And my whole career, I was always a captain or assistant captain. Like, I was a high level player within the team because I was really good with people and I understood psychology and dynamics and things like that. It's such a good gift to have when I've got these people in my programs, and they can almost borrow my belief in them until they build up enough strength to believe it themselves. And if I'm there to protect them,
Yes.
and I can create a safe environment for people to work in, like do real work. I'd grown men, grown athletes, grown killers just bawling and sobbing and hugging each other. I've got people like talking about the most traumatic things that they've never told anybody in their whole lives. And it's a completely safe space. And like, I believe it's because I'm vulnerable too. I tell the truth too. You know, things happen to me. Things, you know, it's not always perfect. And, but I also believe that anybody that's ever had any difficult situations or trauma gets given almost another gear. It's almost like they've got another gift or a specialty. And the earlier the trauma happens, unfortunately, the bigger the gift and the bigger the next gear is. So if we can get rid of the trauma or deal with the trauma, it's almost like you get another extra gear shifter in your car. So instead of 5 gears, you're driving with 6 or 7 because you've been running this system for 30, 40 years with 5 gears, but you've been lugging 200 pounds of like trauma behind you. And when you can let it go, you can fly. And, you know, it's weird. I don't intend to set out and help people with trauma, but a lot of high performers that find me, when we do a little bit of digging, there's usually something there. And it's not that we judge it at all.
I mean, there's something there with everybody.
Yeah.
With everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's one thing to be in a safe container, to believe in yourself, to have certain skills, but you have to use your voice. You have to actually ask for what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And you say very openly that your biggest regret of your time in the NHL is that you didn't stand up for yourself and ask for what you wanted from the GM, from the coach, from whoever, right? You speak very openly about this. So, you know, now you're not living with any regret. You're a yes and here I am. I'm going to do anything, and you make a success and unleash your champion, and you become a pro at everything that you do. And that's a very big part of your coaching. And I want to take everybody inside some of your system in a little bit. But when you learn to listen to your training, how do you hold that now instead of beating yourself up about that? There's a really fine line there, right? Where you take the lesson, you don't beat yourself up, and you harness it so that you can really utilize that to propel you to that next level. So just take me inside of that. I didn't use my voice and stand up for myself, and how that informs what you do now.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know I knew my value, but I was afraid to verbalize my value. And
tell me about that.
Okay.
Why?
Because the way I was raised from my father, you know, you're grateful for what you have, which is a great thing, but you don't rock the boat. You don't talk back. Like, as good as my dad was in so many categories, there was a couple of things that were programmed into him discipline-wise that didn't serve me at all. Like, we didn't really celebrate goals. I would score so many goals that he's like, hey, don't rub it in the other kids' faces on the other team. Well, I wasn't doing that on purpose. I was just so excited to score that I'd jump around. And then he's like, hey, you don't have to do that, you know? So then even in life, I would have these big momentous celebrations. I wouldn't really let myself celebrate it. And it probably goes back to on the ice as a kid. So like that was weird.
Yeah. Dave, the other thing that struck me though, that's coming into my heart right now, that really pierced me when I listened to your book, because I could really relate to it. You also had a narrative where your mother had told you many, many times, I think you said over 1,000 times, you almost killed me when you were born. And so did that narrative of you're too much if you ask for more, you're too much, just being the sheer magnitude of your natural power is too much. Did that play into this at all? This idea of not rocking the boat with the power of the totality of you and what you wanted from the world?
I'm trying to feel it. I don't I don't know, but maybe there's something there. I honestly don't know. I don't think that I fear my own power. I think,
But back then, did you at all?
well, this is like, I didn't,
Because you hadn't unleashed all this
you know,
feminine energy yet.
you know what's crazy? Yeah, you know what's crazy, and I never put this in the book, I don't think. But like I used to speak to God, like have direct communications with a higher power of something. I don't really know. We didn't go to church or any of those things. But like I would talk to invisible people. Like as a child,
Yeah.
my dad caught me because I was doing it all the time, and it was like constant, and it was like real, 100% real. I know it was. And my dad's like, "Hey, what
Yeah.
are you doing?" And I'm talking to Simon. Who's Simon? I'm like, "He's right there." Dad's like, "What are you talking about? You don't do that." And like he would give me trouble and threaten to like give me spanking if I kept doing it. So like I turned it off. I said, "We can't do that anymore. Like we can't talk anymore." And like I literally turned that piece off of me. And little glimpses throughout my lifetime, these weird things, psychic things, and all these crazy abilities have popped in and popped out. I haven't really harnessed them all yet. I know they're there. I know that there's definitely healing aspects that I can use right now with people, but I haven't totally harnessed the whole other stuff, and I don't even know what it is. But the way that I was raised,
Yeah.
you
Yet.
don't do that. You don't do that. And I love my dad,
Yeah.
but it was beyond his comprehension that somebody could have access to something like that. But the more that I've traveled
Yes.
around the world, I know it's a certainty that I believe we can all have access to those abilities. It's just a matter of getting all this other gunk out of the way that's been dumped on us for our entire lifetimes and get back to like alignment. And it's almost like that
Yeah.
those sensors on your body just get all turned back on. And this grand master I
Yeah.
work with, there's 256 sensors around the body. And we would work together, and he would try to activate all these different things that got turned off over time. And you could imagine a car accident, a bike crash, a heartbreak, when somebody cheated on you or lied to you or whatever. It just like you just start turning stuff off because it's so painful if you're a sensitive soul, like I'm sure most of your listeners are. And it's like, wow, okay, like what would happen if I turned all that back on? What would happen if I put my antenna up and said, "Listen, I'm ready now. Like direct me, guide me, lead me. I'm totally tuned in. I will be a servant." You know, before I got on this podcast.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about this.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of listening to God. So whatever your sense of that, of the higher power is, because everybody's got their own sense. So when you died on the ice or, you know, had that near-death experience and you literally spoke to your sense of God, and that really opened the portal to you listening to God within you, listening to God within other people, listening to God, listening to those warning lights, listening to the invitations that will guide you to that next version, the better version, the higher version, as you say, right? So can you take me inside of that journey for you of giving yourself permission again to listen to God and talk to God?
I think that if you think about it, there's God's in all of us as well. So if we're all children of God, then part of God is in us. So what if we were here and we're God-like here on earth, and the message is relayed through us and to other people through God? What would that life look like? You know, before I came back, I asked God what message I could share with the world, and he said, "I want you just to love everyone that you come across and love them like they're your brother or your sister." And I'm like, "What else?" And he's like, "No, that's it. That's it." And I'm like,
Simple.
What would the world be like if we really cared about each other? Like, you're my sister.
And ourselves.
And
ourselves.
This is a good point. I don't know if I put it in the book, but you know, I tell this to clients, like, would you be friends with that little voice inside of your head that sometimes talks to you in a way that's not so.
Yes. The nasty person that says you can't do it. You're not good enough.
I would never be friends with somebody like that. So why would I ever let
Yeah.
myself talk to myself that way? The first time I realized this, it was during my healing comeback, and I just said, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why can't you? Why are you such a mess? And I'm like, who's talking right now? Because I know that I would never speak to another human like that. You know? And
we talk to ourselves like that. And so I want to take us through inside your system a little bit, because it's so much about mindset and vision and holding yourself in this place where you believe that you can do anything and be a pro at anything that you do, a pro in all parts of your life. It's really a whole energy system for your life. So can you take us inside some of these key, it's a 9-step system, 9-step program. There's 3 phases. Can you take us inside of how you came up with these phases and how you take people through guiding them to this next level of themselves?
Yeah. So I just printed off like a little, cheap version of it. And if your audience wants a copy of this, I'm happy to give that to them. Now, the way that I divided it, I really started to think like, okay, I've done some pretty cool stuff in my life, and I've been able to really visualize it and make it happen. So how did I do that? Well, it would start with me actually seeing the thing that I wanted to see or do. Okay. Like, so I need a target. I don't want to play golf with a blindfold on and not have any idea where the green is. I need to know where the flag is. I need to know how long the hole is. Am I on a par 5 or on a par 3? Right? Some people are just out there hitting golf balls all around and they don't really know what they want. You could ask them right now today, what would you like? I don't know. Some more money would be nice. Better relationship. Like, it's so bland and it's so generic. And it's like, if I'm a genie and I can give you 3 wishes and you ask for some more money and I give you $5. There you go. You got some more money.
Yeah, that means something different to everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
It's not specific enough.
I'll be sitting there with a client and they'll be like, oh, okay, like $100,000. And I'm like, okay, great.
And in what currency? I like to be very specific.
But listen, some people's little imaginary roofs ceilings that they put on themselves, you could have asked me for a million. You could have asked me for 10 million or 100 million. I said, what would you like? And they said 100,000. Okay, great. But let's just take a step back and say, why that number? It's so interesting to me. So
yeah, the why
there's
is very
a lot
important.
of programming in us. Okay. So I always like to start with vision. And, on my little sheet here, it says vision expansion. And this first part says $1 million mindset and vision. But it's almost interchangeable with the mindset. Okay. So you can have the best plan in the world, but if you're not all in on it and you're not you're going to die for your cause to make sure this happens, it's not going to happen. It won't. The dark energies of the universe are going to say, you know what? Tess, she is 1,000% committed. She's going to see this through. We're going to not try to suppress her anymore because she's going to get there eventually. But Sally and Tim and Frank and, Christina, they're not quite so sure. So we can go and dump, we call it the matrix in my world, or resistance, or the last stand. We can take these negative energies and dissipate them, and eventually they'll give up, because part of them will think, well, who am I to think I can write a best-selling book? Who am I to think I could do an Ironman? Who am I to think I could do $1 million marketing campaign? Who am I to think I could make the NHL? It'll throw doubt. If you have doubt, you're done. You have to be willing to expend every ounce of energy that you have to make sure your dream comes true. And it's almost like magic. Once you commit to that level, for real, not just saying it, it's almost like a portal opens or something. And it's like, well, okay, wow, we just advanced the level. We just advanced the stage, right? And then it comes to energy awareness, the next stage, number 3. So why energy awareness? Tess, I want you to really think about this. If something isn't working in your life, now look at relationship, finances, health, spirituality even. If something's not working in your life, there's a really good chance there's not enough energy or the right quality of energy being directed at that particular category.
Yeah.
Because if it was right, your health would be amazing. If it was right, the right amount of energy, your finances would be incredible. But some people usually have one good category and a couple mediocre and then one that's really not very good. So it's like, how do we spin all those plates and keep a balanced life while being out of balance on purpose? Because that's really the only way to grow.
Yes.
You have to almost borrow time and energy from different categories to keep all those plates spinning.
And you get to decide every day, and it can change depending on what needs to be done.
I said it to my group. I have a group coaching group of like 30 pretty awesome people, and I said to them today, I'm like, okay, what are you going to create today? It's a clean slate. You get to create and build this day with anything that you want. Like, how great is that? We live in a free country. Our armies and militaries protect us, so we have freedom of choice for the most part, right? And we can go and do and create and become anything we want. Like, how lucky are we?
Yeah, it's a privilege.
So lucky.
And I think often we squander it each day, this privilege of getting to do whatever we want to do.
1,000%. And imagine, like, I'm just using health for an example, but imagine, whatever you believe in, but God's looking down on you and he said, I gave you this one vessel to use for your whole life. Let's see how good you're taking care of it, Dave. That bag of Cheetos and that cheesy hot dog, chili cheese dog. I don't know if those are quite the thing that's going to keep your body vibrating at the highest frequency possible. But, we get this one vessel to live in, and what are we going to do with it? And I use this analogy with my clients. I said, when my kids were little, I bought them all these little sports things to see what they wanted to play. A soccer ball, a football, hockey stick, golf club. And I put them out around the yard. And I'm like, whatever they pick up, that's the sport they're going to play. And they would tinkle around. But eventually, they just left them out there, right? They left them outside. They went and played electronics. They did whatever, right? Now imagine if you're God and he gave us all these tools and all these things to play with. And he's watching us and we're just leaving them sitting out in the yard. We're not using them at all. He gave us all these gifts and we're not even using them. Like, he'd almost be disappointed a little bit, right? I don't want to waste these gifts. I don't want to not use the tools that I have or the skill sets that I have. I want to try everything. It's probably one of my weaknesses. I have a shiny object syndrome. I love everything and I want to try this and read this book and learn from this person.
Well, our superpowers are our Achilles heel when not held in balance. So it's exactly what you're saying and I think that's why accepting that we cannot do it alone. We're meant to do it in relationship with others. We're meant to have coaches. Going back to what you always say, I've had coaches my whole life, and you've had literal coaches. Your dad was your first coach. Then you had all these coaches as a hockey player. You've had all of these coaches as, Tony Robbins and all of these other people, shamans. Now you are a coach. We are teachers. We're being coached and we're coaches. All of us, whether we've got the label of coach or not, we are being taught and we are teaching all the time. And when we actually claim those parts of ourselves and our wisdom, that it has value to ourselves and others, you talk about this a lot in your podcast. It's really beautiful. I want to ask you. So, sorry. Let's end with the last bit of the of your system, because I don't want everybody to miss that.
So the
please don't. I want to hear it.
Okay, the total transformation shift. This is phase 2, but it starts with that champion's identity. So remembering those times when we were crushing life, when we were in the zone, when we were dialed in, remembering that and grabbing all of those fundamental characteristics, traits, and attributes and plugging that into our new operating system. Is this the old operating system that's
Yes.
running us right now, or is this the new one? Because this new one is optimized. It's special. It's
Ooh, I like that.
the champion's map, understanding where you are on your journey. And I have this whole thing where it's like the different levels. And it's like, this is awakened and champion. And then there's this ladder to champion that a lot of people are trying to climb. And there's just existence, where I feel like 80% of our society is programmed into. And then there's this tunnel to hell where you start to slide and the energy starts to drop. And then there's the pit. And that's where it gets really dark. But I would rather have people come to me when they're in the pit than when they're in existence, because in existence, there's not quite enough pain to make change. You're just...
Ooh, tell me about that, because I think that a lot of people stay in the pit because they think it's hopeless and that it feels so deep and they feel so stuck like quicksand that they're like, okay, what's the point? I may as well just roll over and die and succumb to it. So tell me about that, like that we can re-energize the pit.
Yeah. Well, the pit is like, it eventually becomes so painful that you got to move. You got to do something. You got to make a move. You got to make a shift.
Yes.
You got to try something new. You had heartbreak, you had grief, you had financial loss or something, but it becomes so unbearable and it's so uncomfortable that you'll actually do something. You'll do anything to get away from that, right? Existence is like the slow, like zombie like death, where like things, you're living paycheck to paycheck. It's going okay until there's a COVID or until there's like a disruption, and then you start to slide. And at that point, it's too late. You don't have anything to grab onto, nothing to inspire you by. It's very dangerous. Like that existence, you're just kind of cruising along. It's very neutral. There's no energy. There's new ideas. Your relationship is like a friendship. There's no passion. At least even with a pit, if you got a divorce, it would do something to your system to shock it enough to like make some changes. You're going to get...
you feel you're activated.
Yeah.
You're activated. Like fear and excitement activated in the same place in the body. It's just a different expectation of the outcome.
Exactly.
So that we can energize and completely catapult ourselves in those darkest moments. Yes, I love this.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. So anyways, back to our phase 2. So the time expansion secret. So once you kind of start to operate in this champion and you know where you are on your map, then you can kind of reverse engineer, like, how am I going to get there, right? Like, what are the things I really got to do?
Yep.
What's the big domino? If I could figure this one thing out, what would that do for me? And you start to build your life. And like I talked about, if God gave you 100 units of energy today, Tess, and you're trying to accomplish this big thing, but you're only using 5 units or 10 units of it because you're running to the grocery store and you're doing errands and you're like you're just doing a bunch of stuff. You're very busy, but you're not activating energy towards that big goal. It's not really going to move. You kind of have to like chunk and block time off to really get that boulder up the mountain. You know what I mean? It'd be like you're trying to get 20 boulders up at the same time, roll them up to the top of the mountain and push them over. You can't. You almost need to like focus on one and push it up there and be like, okay, whew, we got that one. What's next, right? So I really like to focus on one big thing and maybe 1 or 2 subcategories that kind of support that one big thing. So that's it. Like, I don't let people focus on 8 or 9 or 6 or 5. We're going to do those later.
Yep. Just be laser focused.
Yeah, and really use big chunks of energy and time for that. And then the third phase.
And then you help them with the micro wins, right? Eating the whale one bite at a time.
Absolutely. I think that's how you get people rolling. Like if you ever start a challenge or a webinar or anything and you want to get people buying in, you give them some micro wins right away and be like, look at what you guys did already. You did this, you did this, you did this. One of the things I did in my free challenges was this decluttering day. And like people couldn't believe it because they'd find money, they'd find something they could sell. The energy would change, they would clean their office. Like it's crazy. So that was like a silly little thing. But every time I did it, people loved it. And it would help them. So I'm like, I'm keeping it in there. So I still have that. If something isn't going good in my life, I go and declutter. I clean out a closet, I clean out a filing cabinet, and I just like clean my energy space. So elite execution is the last phase, and this is how we actually like implement. So we all have tons of ideas in our brains, right? We're so smart, and there's so much information now for people. YouTube and all this amazing free training out there. Like it's really pretty incredible times to do in AI. Like it's incredible times to do big things. but it's hard to like execute it. Okay. When I did all my work with 20, I implemented maybe like at the time, I was 2 years with him, but I could maybe implement like 20 or 30% because every month you're going away and you're doing another completely different program. So 1 month is finances, 1 month is relationship, 1 month is, UPW or Date with Destiny or health and wealth or whatever, all the things, right? Well, executing it is so much more valuable than learning it. So I try to grab bullet points. And when I learn something, like even on this podcast, everyone listening, if you've learned something, write it down and then like write some actions that you're going to do today or this week on it. Oh, I'm going to declutter my office. Dave says, okay, great. Awesome. What else am I going to do? I'm going to really sit back and look at all these highlights of my life. Okay, great. Build it into your schedule. Say I got an hour where I'm going to focus on that tomorrow and just see where that takes me. So like really time chunking and time blocking. Listen, Tess, we've done this. Hey, Tess, I love you. I'd love to grab a coffee sometime. Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And you genuinely mean it, right? You want to see this person again. But life gets busy. You got wife, you got kids, you got friends, you got all these people. And then like you never have the coffee. And you're like, why not? I wanted to see her again. Yeah. It was going to be good. Well, I didn't block it. I didn't. When I write it down in my calendar, it's a done deal. It's happening. If I don't, it's probably 50-50, if that. So we really...
Yeah, I have to schedule things in.
Yeah.
Or I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a shiny object person too, by the way. But yeah, I have to schedule it in and be a person of my word and commit and be a doer.
Yeah. Yeah. So number 8 out of the 9, and I'll be quick, is the dream catcher. So this came to me in a meditation. It's so cool. And I literally, sitting in front of me on my old whiteboard, I've kept this up since 2022, and it's still there. I can see I have this, but I use it so often in teaching that I just keep it up all the time. But when your container that you have created for yourself and your identity and your role is smaller, imagine like raindrops falling from the sky. I look at it like the organizing intelligence of the universe is giving me like abundant information and data to work with. Okay, I'm getting downloads. As I've gotten bigger and as my identity's grown bigger, my container's grown bigger, I can process more stuff. Okay. Well, at the beginning, my client in 2019, he's making $650,000. He's a realtor out of Vancouver, great guy, anxiety attacks and all this stuff. But his identity was very small, and his container about what he believed to be true or could process was very small. So we opened him up. We took off some of the masks, took off some of the armor. He started like tuning into some new stuff. We built a new container that was bigger because he had bigger goals, and it was to double his salary. Well, this guy went from 650 to 1.2. I'm looking at his numbers, 2.5, 4.5, and 6.5 million year after year after year. And all we did is move him from this like blocked guy with all this stuff to like this wide open guy that's so tuned in that he can literally visualize and manifest like to the 0.1%. We set these goals a year ahead of time.
Wow.
How many homes he was going to sell, what price point, what part of town, how many people he'd hire on his team. It was like insane. And he nailed it year after year after year after year. He speaks at my events now, and he's not even a client anymore because he teaches the stuff that I taught him, and he's doing so great.
Oh, it's so great, isn't it? It's so great when you rip the ceiling off.
Yeah.
And you take away the limits of what you're capable of.
Yeah. And that container piece, I'm going to give you like just a little visual. So like imagine you create a container that's so big because your goals are so big that there's no way that you can do them by yourself. You're going to need help from the unbound energy of the universe. Like God's going to help you with this one because it's for the right reasons, right? So I want to have an impact over 1 million people's lives, and I want to step up and be the best version of me and be able to relay this information and share it and broadcast it to people all over the world, where it's going to have a ripple effect into their communities, into their families, and into their lives, okay? Well, I can't do that all on my own. So I'm going to build a container that's like a swimming pool. And all this data, all this information is going to rain down, and I can't process it all at the exact same time, but it's going to slowly start to fill up the pool. And I'm standing in the pool, so I can absorb it. I can figure it out. I can know what's coming next. I can kind of like sense things, because I've got more time. It's not missing my container because my container is so tiny. All the raindrops are missing, right? I know this is a little bit out there for some people, but stick with me. Using the soul and the unbound energy of the universe, along with new attributes, a bigger soul role, a bigger container, different rules, different beliefs, different perspectives, and not making it all about me. There's no me in this. It's we. That's when I get the juice.
Yeah.
Because it has nothing to do with me. And actually, Donnie Epstein, who's Tony Robbins' healer, is a dear friend of mine. I've been with him for 8 years. I've done all his stuff, and he's worked on me personally, trying to help me with my body and my mind. But he always talks about energy and the unbound energy of the universe. But when I was training for my Ironman, Tess, this is so cool. I tore my Achilles tendon, and it was pretty close to the race. I'm like, Donnie, help me. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this race. I've trained so hard. And he goes, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I said, go for it. He said, why are you doing this race? I said, I wanted to show my clients. I sit on stage one year and I said, anything's possible. Like, I could do a fucking pardon my language, I could do an Ironman if I wanted. and I go, you know what? I'll do one next year, and I'll stand on the stage and tell you, and I'm going to show you pictures from my Ironman. I'm going to do this. Like, I don't know how to swim very well. I ran a marathon. I never done any of these.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, I put it out there in the universe, and I did start to train for it, and I was struggling. It was not really smooth sailing, but Donnie, right near the end, he gave me some great advice. He said, who are you doing this for? I said, I want to be an inspiration to my clients. I think my family would love it. Show my kids, I'd be really proud that their dad did it. I want to do it for myself, considering a couple of years ago, I barely walk and talk. Like, what a story this could be. You can write a book just on this. And he says, okay. He said, you're not going to make it. He goes, you're going to get hurt, Dave. You're going to cramp up. You're not going to finish the race. He said, what are your goals? I said, I want to just finish the race. I want to do it and be like in love with the race. I want to have joy and bliss the entire race. And I don't care what my time is. I just want to complete it and not get hurt. He goes, well, you're going to get hurt with that goal. I said, what do you mean? He said, Dave, your goal has to be so big that there's no way you can do it on your own. And it has to come from somewhere higher. You have to be blazing a new pathway for humanity and creating a path for other people to follow you in. If you're doing it for humanity, you'll get everything you need. If you're doing it for Dave Scatchard, you're only going to get this much. I said, wow. It hit me so hard, I stopped talking for like a minute, and then I got a tear. I said, you know what, bro? You're so right. Everything that I've ever done, those challenges that I did for people, it wasn't about me. I was trying to help people. It wasn't even about making money. I didn't have an offer at the time. This race isn't about anything other than like being an inspiration to people. And I literally felt like I was being carried through that race. It was the most beautiful thing. I did it really quite fast too. My coach wants me to try to qualify for the World Championships for my 50th birthday.
Well, it's very in line with I'm going to be a pro at everything that I do, right? So every single thing that you do, you make it to the absolute elite level. Well, elite execution, to coin your phrase from your program. Oh, gosh, listener.
I'm running, and I'm like, I'm blazing a new pathway for humanity. I'm blazing a new pathway.
Right. Well, listen, but it is when we make big goals and we are carrying everybody with us and everybody inside of us, God, everybody else in the world. It just does become this force.
Yeah.
It takes on a life of its own. Yes. And there's real power, and there's an energy and momentum of being in the flow of that and allowing yourself to be carried by that, as you were saying. I really, really love it. So, listener, you can find Dave in so many places, and we've got all the links in the show notes. allstarcoaching.com, and there's, you can find Dave's book, The Comeback, My Journey Through Heaven and Hell. It's such a great read. I loved it. And there's so many great ways that you can enter Dave's world. So please check that out in the show notes and on our website. Dave, I always close every episode with the same question, which is, for somebody listening right now who has a dream in their heart and doesn't feel like they have what it takes to make it happen, what would you say to them?
I've done it, and I've seen hundreds of clients do things that everyone said was impossible. When it becomes all of you, and it's something that you lay in bed and think about and you dream about, and you just know in your heart that you're being pulled to go do it, I just feel like you have to do it. You have to do it, and you have to exhaust it. And you never, ever, ever, ever fail until you quit. You just haven't got there yet. You only lose if you quit. So I literally budgeted out my Ironman trying to figure out if I walked the marathon at the end, could I still get in under 17 hours is when the cutoff time was for a 140-mile race. I'm like, I just got to reverse engineer to figure this out. Like, will I just keep putting one foot in front of the other over and over and over until I'm at the end of the race? That's it. So as long as you don't quit, you haven't lost. It just hasn't happened yet. And I would also look at, really focusing on, is your energy right? Are you aligned? Are you doing everything possible to give yourself the best chance for success? And then just repeating that until you master the craft. Because I truly, truly believe that it's possible.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, listening to that, it has to be me. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. And I'm so happy that I am in your world now.
Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you.
Oh, I wrote down so many takeaways from our conversation. What do you want? Don't waste your gifts. You get to create and build this day. Be super specific, like you're talking to a genie. That was great when you said that, right? Knowing your target, being 100% committed, and looking at the quality of your energy. If you have doubt, you're done. It was harsh, but true, right? And the work that is required to get where you want to go. I loved when he said, work on what you can control, and then your odds of succeeding just go up. That idea of he went out there and he hit those pucks night after night after night, year after year, and that is what it took to get to the NHL. I loved when he said the secret to doing all the work is falling in love with the work, falling in love with the learning. And when you learn, write it down. I loved when he said that, write down an action that you can take so you can put that learning into practice. Schedule and commit. Put it on the calendar, that action that you're going to take in order to make it happen. I loved when he was talking about running with a fully optimized system, and that's how you unleash the champion within you, and making your container bigger, ripping the ceiling off what you can achieve, what's possible for you. How can you find that next gear? The trauma can give you another gear. I found it interesting what he was saying about energizing the pit. The darkest place in you, when you think it's really hopeless, your pain is great enough that it instigates change. That a bad experience is not punishment, it's training to help you find that next gear, find that next level within you. I like when he was talking about the importance of checking in, about the adjustments that are needed. Forget ordinary when you can have extraordinary, that there's a higher version of yourself calling you. I liked when he was saying, forget the programming or the outdated thoughts that encourage you to operate at a lower frequency. To think back at a time when you felt powerful, to remember what your higher frequency feels like, and that you can install a new operating system that has more bandwidth. What would happen if you allowed yourself to turn on all of those parts of yourself? I loved that. when he was talking about the self-worth piece, that really resonated with me when he said, I knew my value, but I didn't know how to verbalize my value. I loved our conversation about identity too, that you get to choose how you hold all the parts of yourself, the importance of balancing the masculine and the feminine, the gladiator and the monk. And you get to discern when you put on your armor and have firm boundaries with certain people and when you decide to rip off the masks, and that vulnerability is a strength. We just need to be discerning about who and how we share it, who we share it with and how we share it. And that you can borrow other people's strength until you can find your own. And that's the value of having mentors and teachers and coaches and community. That we're always in training. I love his philosophy about that. We're always in training to be the person that we want to be and the person that we are. And that every experience gives us the tools for the next experience. We just need to harness all of those lessons, you know, to hold our full power. I loved when he said, you never fail until you quit. You just haven't gotten there yet. So you can enter Dave's world at allstarcoaching.com. And I can't wait to hear from you about what else you learned from him.
I want to hear about your It Has To Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.